preface, he cast her out beneath the full moon, never knowing she carried his blood. 6 years later, the woman he broke returns, not as a broken mate, but as a mother. When fate pulls them together once again, old wounds bleed, secrets rise from the ashes, and the alpha who once rejected her must face the legacy he left behind. Chapter 1. The Night of Rejection. The moon hung like a blade over the clearing, thin, sharp, and merciless. Every rustle in the wind sounded like judgment. Every heartbeat beneath Leora Hale's ribs felt like a countdown. The Oakreach pack had gathered in a circle, their silhouettes a wall of dark fur and colder eyes. Torches hissed in the night air, their light trembling on faces that refused to meet hers. At the center stood Cassian Vale, the Alpha, the man who once promised to protect her from everything, even from himself. Now, he was the one holding the dagger. Leora stood barefoot on the frozen earth. The hem of her pale dress clung to her legs, soaked by dew. Her hands trembled, but not from the chill. It was the weight of what she already knew. Tonight, she would lose him. Leora Hale, Cassian's voice cut through the murmuring crowd, steady and deep as thunder before the rain. By the law of the moon, and by the blood of our ancestors, I, Cassian Vale, reject you as my mate and Luna of the Oakreach pack. The words struck harder than claws ever could. Leora's knees nearly buckled. But she didn't move. Not yet, not before she saw his eyes. They were silver tonight, beautiful, cold, and unreachable. For a moment she almost forgot how to breathe. The bond between them, once a thread of warmth that hummed beneath her skin, snapped with a soundless tear she felt in her soul. She swallowed, the lump in her throat sharp as glass. "And I," she whispered, her voice small but steady, "accept your rejection." A tremor ran through the ground beneath her feet, the ancient forest itself reacting to the severed bond. Her wolf whimpered inside her, a strangled cry that no one else could hear. Cassian's jaw flexed just once. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw hesitation, regret, maybe, but then it was gone. He turned away. And that was when she felt it. The dull ache in her lower abdomen, the faint flutter of something fragile and alive. Her hand fell to her stomach. He didn't know. He would never know. The pack began to disperse, muttering words that blurred into the night. Someone sneered. Someone laughed. She stood there until the torches burned low and only the moon remained. Only then did she move. Her feet carried her into the woods, where the shadows swallowed sound. Every step was heavier than the last, and with each one, she left behind a version of herself that no longer existed. The healer's daughter, the Alpha's mate, the dreamer who believed in destiny. Gone. Branches clawed at her arms as if trying to pull her back. She stumbled over roots, gasping for breath, until the ritual clearing was a memory behind her. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled, a deep, mournful sound that echoed what she couldn't say aloud. By dawn, she reached the river that marked the end of Oakreach territory. The air smelled of pine, iron, and loss. She sank to her knees beside the water and finally allowed herself to break. The sobs came quietly at first, then all at once, shattering through the fragile silence. She pressed a hand against her belly, whispering through her tears. "It's just us now, my little one. It's just us." The first light of morning touched her face, cold and colorless. And somewhere far behind her, in the Alpha's house, Cassian Vale stood alone before a mirror, his reflection staring back at him with eyes that looked haunted. He reached for the silver pendant she had once given him, moonstone, shaped like a tear, and clenched it in his hand. For a fleeting moment he felt the faintest warmth of her scent, wild honey and rain, and something inside him recoiled. But the air was still, and she was gone. Chapter 2. The Road Beyond Oakreach. The forest at dawn was a cathedral of mist and silence. Pale light spilled through branches heavy with dew, touching the earth in thin silver ribbons. The air was sharp enough to bite, but Leora barely felt it. Her bare feet moved over moss and frost, one after another, guided by instinct more than reason. She had crossed the border. There was no going back. Every step away from Oakreach felt like shedding a skin that no longer belonged to her, yet the ache in her chest refused to fade. The mark of the rejection burned faintly along her collarbone, a phantom reminder of the bond that had once tied her soul to Cassian's. She touched the spot, her fingers trembling, nothing but cold. No warmth, no connection, only silence. The world beyond her pack's territory stretched wild and uncharted, forests that whispered secrets, rivers that hummed old songs, and mountains that pierced the clouds. The rogues lived somewhere beyond those ridges, but even they wouldn't come this far north. Not this early in the season. Her breath formed clouds before her lips. She wrapped her arms around herself, but the real chill came from within. The one thing that kept her moving was the small, stubborn pulse beneath her hand, tiny, fragile, but alive. "We're going to find a place," she murmured, "a place where no one will hurt us again." A raven's cry broke the stillness. It circled overhead, black wings slicing through fog before vanishing into the trees. Something about it made her pause. The forest felt aware, as if it was watching her. Then came the smell, smoke, and blood. Her wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin, pushing against the edges of her consciousness. Danger, the whisper echoed inside her skull, primal and urgent. She ducked low, her senses sharpening, the sound of twigs snapping somewhere ahead, the faint metallic scent carried by the wind. Leora crouched behind an oak trunk just as two figures emerged into view, hunters. They weren't wolves. The tang of silver clung to their weapons. Rogues sometimes hired men like these to trap wandering shifters, sell their pelts, their bones, their secrets. Her stomach tightened. If they caught her, she'd never see the next sunrise. The taller one, his beard matted with dirt, scanned the area with a wary gaze. The tracker said she came through here, a she-wolf, unmarked. Unmarked, the word scraped against her nerves like a blade. That was what she was now. No pack, no bond, no protection. Her pulse quickened. Run? Hide? Her wolf hissed inside her, demanding she shift, but she couldn't, not yet. Her wolf form was still unstable after the rejection. Shifting now could tear her apart. She crouched lower, steadying her breath. The hunters moved closer, scanning the ground, their boots crunching over dead leaves. One of them lifted his head, nostrils flaring. "Wait," he said. "Do you smell that?" Laura pressed her hand over her mouth. The faintest trace of her scent, fear, sweat, and something wilder hung in the air. She counted the beats of her heart. 1, 2, 3. Then movement. A shadow flitted past the hunters. Fast, silent, too large to be human. A growl rippled through the air, low and lethal. The men barely had time to react before a dark wolf lunged from the undergrowth, knocking the smaller one off his feet. Blood spattered across the snow. The other man fired his gun, but the wolf dodged with terrifying precision. In 2 heartbeats, it was over. The wolf stood over the bodies, panting, fur bristling, eyes glowing an unnatural shade of blue. Leora's breath caught. Not rogue, not ordinary. Alikin. He turned toward her hiding place, head tilting slightly, nose lifting to catch her scent. The power radiating from him hit her like a wave, commanding, ancient, almost electric. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but her legs refused to move. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, his massive form half-shadowed by the mist. Then, before her eyes, his bones shifted, fur receding into skin. In seconds, a man stood where the wolf had been. Tall, broad-shouldered, barefoot. The morning light caught on the faint scars across his chest, each one a story she didn't want to hear. His hair, dark as obsidian, clung damply to his neck, and when his eyes met hers, they were still that piercing blue. "Come out," he said, voice low, roughened by the shift. "I know you're there." Leora hesitated, but something in his tone, neither command nor threat, just certainty, drew her forward. She stepped from behind the oak, her hair tangled, her dress torn at the hem. His gaze swept over her like a physical touch, assessing. "You're far from home," he said, and bleeding. She hadn't realized until then. Her palms were scratched raw, her ankle twisted. The adrenaline had hidden the pain. Now it throbbed, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. He studied her for a long moment. "You can call me Kale." Then, after a pause, "And you shouldn't be here alone." Her lips parted, the instinct to argue rising. But the exhaustion hit her all at once. The world tilted. Kyle reached her just as her knees gave way. His arms caught her with startling gentleness, his warmth seeping into her chilled skin. For a second, their eyes met again, and something buried deep in her chest shifted. The last thing she heard before the darkness claimed her was his voice, quiet but firm. "Rest, little wolf. You're safe now for tonight." Chapter 3. The Stranger's Den. The world returned in fragments, light first, then sound, then the scent of burning wood. Leora's eyes opened slowly to the flicker of a fire dancing across rough, hewn walls. The air was warm, heavy, with the scent of pine resin and smoke. A single window let in a narrow strip of morning sunlight, slanting across her bare arms. She flinched instinctively and sat up. Pain pulsed in her ankle, dull but constant. Someone had wrapped it with linen, clean, tight, efficient. A blanket of coarse wool slid down her shoulders as she turned her head, taking in her surroundings. The room was small but sturdy, built of old timber and stone. Tools lined the wall blades, hunting gear, herbs hanging from the rafters. Whoever lived here was no ordinary wanderer. Her pulse quickened. Kale, the name came back to her like a memory she hadn't meant to keep. Before she could gather her thoughts, the door creaked open. The scent hit her first earth, musk, a faint trace of storm air. Then he stepped inside, carrying a basin of water. His dark hair was still damp, loose around his face, and the sleeves of his black shirt were rolled to the elbows. He looked human now, too human. "You're awake," he said simply, setting the basin on the table. His voice filled the small space, low and even, but there was something restrained beneath it, something that made her heartbeat stumble. "How long was I out?" she asked, her throat dry. "Half a day. You had a fever from exhaustion." He poured water into a cup and handed it to her. His hands were scarred but steady. She took it carefully, her fingers brushing his. The touch was brief, but electric warmth surged through her chest, so suddenly it almost hurt. She drew her hand back too quickly, spilling a few drops of water onto her lap. "Thank you," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. Kale studied her quietly for a moment. "You were lucky I found you before the hunters did." "Lucky," she gave a small, bitter laugh. "That's not usually a word people use about me." He tilted his head slightly. "You sound like someone who stopped believing in luck a long time ago." "Maybe I did." The silence between them stretched thin, humming with unspoken questions. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, a sound like whispers trapped between leaves. Kyle finally broke the quiet. "You crossed the Oakreach border. That's suicide for most wolves. Are you running from something?" Her eyes lifted sharply to his. "Everyone's running from something." His mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's not an answer." Leora hesitated. She couldn't tell him the truth. Not about Cassian, not about the rejection, and certainly not about the small life growing inside her. So she lied. "I left because I didn't belong there anymore." Kyle studied her face, searching. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him for now. "You can stay until your ankle heals," he said at last, turning toward the fire. "After that, I'll help you find a route north." She frowned. "Why?" Because leaving you in the woods would make me an animal. He glanced over his shoulder, his gaze cutting through her with quiet intensity. And I'm trying not to be one. For a moment, neither of them moved. The flames crackled softly, painting shadows across his face. Leora realized with a start that his eyes weren't just blue, they were streaked with silver, like lightning trapped in ice. Lichen, a reminder of the stories she'd heard as a child, about their strength, their power, their isolation. They were the wolves that ruled above all others, said to be blessed, and cursed by the moon herself. "Where exactly am I?" she asked. "My territory," he replied. "A forgotten part of the Blackwood Range. Few packs come this far." She glanced at the weapons along the wall. "You live here alone." "Mostly." He poked the fire with a stick, watching sparks leap into the air. "Sometimes solitude is easier than people." Her chest tightened at the truth in that. Easier, yes, but lonelier too. When he looked at her again, the intensity of his gaze made her forget to breathe. "You should rest. Your body's still weak." "I'm fine," she said too quickly. The stubbornness in her voice sounded almost defensive. "I've handled worse. I don't doubt that," he murmured, his lips curving faintly. "But the last time I checked, handling worse doesn't mean refusing help." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "There's food on the table. Eat something before you pass out again." When the door closed behind him, the silence returned, thicker this time, pressing against her like a weight. She let out a slow breath and looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled. She hadn't told him her name. And yet, there was something in his eyes when he looked at her. Not curiosity, recognition. Like he'd seen her before, somewhere in a life she didn't remember. Outside, the wind shifted. The faint echo of a distant howl rose from beyond the mountains, carrying the scent of danger. Leora's hand instinctively went to her stomach. Her wolf stirred within her, restless. "He's not what he seems," the voice whispered, "and neither are you." Chapter 4. The Wolf Beneath Her Skin. Sleep did not come softly. It clawed at her, dragging her into a darkness deeper than exhaustion. Something that pulsed, alive, almost sentient. The warmth of Kale's den vanished, replaced by a field of ash and wind. She stood barefoot beneath a moon that bled red into the clouds. Her breath fogged the air. The sound of wolves surrounded her, snarls, low and restless, circling just beyond sight. But they weren't her enemies. They were waiting, watching. Then came the voice, low, familiar, fractured by guilt. "You were never meant to leave me." Her chest tightened. Cassian. He emerged from the fog bare-chested, eyes glowing with the same silver she once loved, and now feared. But there was something wrong. His form flickered, unstable, as if made of smoke and memory. When he reached for her, his hand passed right through her shoulder. She staggered back. "You don't get to haunt me," she whispered. "You ended it." Cassian's gaze softened. "Number the moon ended it." "I only obeyed what I was told." Lyora's voice broke. "You obeyed your fear." The air around them shifted, sharp wind cutting between them, scattering the ash underfoot. Somewhere distant, a heartbeat echoed. Not hers, not his. Another. Cassian's expression changed. Confusion, then realization. His hand hovered over her abdomen, where the faint shimmer of light pulsed through her dress like the glow of a buried ember. "Lyra, what have you done?" Before she could speak, the world shattered like glass. She gasped awake, sitting upright, sweat slick on her skin. The fire had burned low. The cabin was bathed in blue-gray light from the window. Her pulse thundered in her throat. Her hands flew to her stomach still, safe, alive. A wave of dizziness hit her. The dream had felt too real. Cassian sent his voice, that glimmer of moonlight under her skin. Her wolf stirred uneasily, pacing within her mind. "He still feels the bond," it whispered. Even if he denied it. She pressed her palms to her temples. "No," she whispered to the empty room. "That bond is dead." A sound from outside made her freeze, the creak of footsteps, soft but deliberate. Then the door opened, and Kyle stepped in, carrying a fresh bundle of firewood. His gaze landed on her instantly, sharp and assessing. "You're pale," he said. "Nightmares?" She swallowed. "You could say that." He crouched near the fireplace, stacking wood with practiced precision. "You talk in your sleep." Her breath caught. "What did I say?" He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "A name." She didn't dare ask which one. The silence between them hummed, thick and electric. Kyle fed another log into the fire. The glow caught his features, the strong line of his jaw, the faint shadows beneath his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. "You've got something wild inside you, Leora. Something your pack didn't understand." She blinked. "How do you?" He stood, turning toward her fully. "Because I can sense it. Your wolf. It's different." The words slid through her mind like ice water she had always known. The whispers in Oakreach, the way her first shift nearly tore her apart, the way the moon's pull felt both foreign and intimate, as if she belonged to something older, deeper. "Maybe I'm just broken," she said bitterly. Kyle's eyes flashed. "Number, you're evolving." The conviction in his tone startled her. She met his gaze, and for the briefest second, she saw something in his expression that mirrored her own loneliness, recognition, maybe even fear. He took a slow step closer. "When I found you in the forest, your scent was faint. Fading almost. That doesn't happen with wolves unless—" "Unless what?" she demanded. "Unless your wolf is merging with something else." His voice dropped to a whisper. Something ancient, her pulse raced. "You're saying I'm not a wolf. I'm saying you're more than that." Before she could respond, a sudden, sharp howl pierced the distance close, urgent and wrong. Kyle stiffened, every muscle tightening. His head turned toward the window, eyes narrowing. "Rogues," he said. Leora's blood ran cold. "How many?" He inhaled deeply, the air around him seeming to hum. "3, maybe 4, coming fast." She started to stand, ignoring the ache in her leg. "Then we run." He shook his head. "Number, they're not here for me." Her stomach dropped. "You think they're after me?" Kyle met her eyes. "I don't think, Leora. I know." A low growl rumbled from his chest as his bones began to shift. The change was swift, his body elongating, muscles coiling, skin giving way to fur as dark as midnight. Within seconds, the man was gone, and the lichen stood in his place. He glanced back at her once, eyes blazing with that storm blue fire. "Stay inside. Lock the door, and whatever happens, don't scream." Then he was gone, crashing through the trees with the force of thunder. Leora stumbled to the window, heart hammering. Shadows moved between the trees, 4 shapes, circling, their eyes glinting red in the dim light. She felt the pull in her chest, primal and raw. Her wolf pushed against her skin, desperate to emerge. "Shift," the voice demanded. "He'll die without you." Her body trembled violently. Pain seared through her veins, molten and alive. Her bones ached, her vision blurred. And then, for the first time since the rejection, her wolf broke free. The world exploded into sound. She could hear the beat of Kale's heart, the snarl of the rogues, the echo of her own breath blending with his. The moon above seemed to pulse in rhythm with her. When she stepped into the clearing, the lichen turned toward her, eyes wide with recognition. And for one suspended moment, amid claws, blood, and silver light, he whispered a single word under his breath. "Impossible." Chapter 5. Blood and Moonlight. The forest trembled under the clash of fangs and fury. Leora's wolf sprinted through the trees, the ground vibrating with each pounding step. The cold night air sliced against her fur, carrying the metallic sting of blood. Somewhere ahead, Kyle's lichen form tore through a rogue, massive, relentless, primal. His growls weren't just animalistic, they resonated with something deeper, something that made the very trees bend with submission. The moon hung high silver, bleeding into crimson clouds, and every instinct in her screamed fight. She leapt, claws flashing, colliding midair with a rogue that lunged from her flank. They hit the ground hard, rolling through dirt and pine needles. The creature's teeth grazed her shoulder, tearing fur and skin. Pain flared white-hot. She snarled, twisting, using the force of her hind legs to launch it off. The world narrowed to scent and motion, Kyle's musk, sweat, blood, and the cold tang of death. Don't think. Move, her wolf obeyed. Kyle slammed into the last rogue, his claws cutting clean through its throat. Blood sprayed, dark against the moonlight. When silence finally fell, it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, vibrating with the aftermath of violence. The night pulsed around them, a living heartbeat. Leora's chest heaved. Her body trembled from the exertion, from the wildness that still roared in her veins. She turned toward Kyle, and for the first time, their wolves stood side by side under the same moonlight. His fur was ink black, streaked with silver scars. He was magnificent, terrifying in his stillness. Slowly he stepped closer, his massive head lowering until his nose brushed against hers. The contact was electric, sending a jolt through her entire being. A growl rumbled from deep in his chest, not in warning, but in recognition. And her wolf answered. For a brief, impossible moment, their heartbeats synchronized. Then, as if burned by what that meant, Kyle stepped back. His form shimmered, bones cracking, fur retreating. In seconds, he was a man again, naked, scarred, glistening with sweat and blood. Steam rose from his skin in the cold. Shift back, he commanded softly, voice low, rough. It's over. She hesitated, her wolf snarling in protest, but his gaze held hers, steady, grounding, and slowly, painfully she shifted. The world blurred, twisted, until she was human again, kneeling in the dirt. Her skin glistened with blood and moonlight, her breath ragged. Kyle crouched in front of her, grabbing a cloth from the pouch on his belt. He wiped the blood from her shoulder, his touch firm but careful. Her body flinched, not from pain, but from the heat that rippled beneath his fingers. You shouldn't have come out, he muttered. You could have died. She met his gaze, voice hoarse. You would have died if I hadn't. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Then, almost a smile, almost. But it faded quickly. They weren't after me, he said quietly. They were marked with the sigil of the Black Fang clan, Laura frowned. That's Cassian's territory. Was Kyle corrected, standing? The Black Fangs don't serve him anymore. They serve something worse. Her stomach twisted. You mean, yes, the High Council. The words dropped like stones into her chest. The Council, the shadow authority that ruled all packs from the north. If they were sending rogues, it wasn't random, it was a message. And she was the message. Kyle paced slowly, scanning the tree line. They must know what you are. Her voice trembled. What am I? He turned to her, eyes glinting in the dim light. Something they fear. The wind howled through the forest, shaking branches, scattering ash from the battlefield. Leora stood slowly, clutching her arm. Her blood dripped onto the soil, thick, dark, shimmering faintly with silver under the moonlight. Kyle noticed. His gaze locked onto it. That's not normal, he said under his breath. She looked down. What? Your blood? He said. It's glowing. He knelt, touching the droplets with his fingertips. A faint hum vibrated through the air, like a whisper from the earth itself. His hand shot back, eyes wide. Moonlight essence. Only alphas born from the first bloodline carry that. Her pulse pounded. But I'm not alpha-born. Kale straightened, his expression darkening. Then the moon has chosen you. Her throat tightened. Chosen me for what? He met her gaze, and there was something like dread in his eyes. To end what the alphas began. They stood there, two wolves beneath a dying moon, realizing that the war they'd both tried to escape was already hunting them. And that destiny was far from done with either of them. Chapter 6. The Bloodline Secret. The forest was silent again, but not peaceful. It was the silence of something waiting. Watching, Kyle led the way through the dark, his steps soundless despite his size. Leora followed a few paces behind, her senses sharpened to every rustle and whisper. The scent of pine and iron filled the air, blood, sap, and the faint echo of something ancient. They didn't speak for a while. The forest didn't like words at night. When Kale finally stopped, they were standing before a narrow ravine. A silver mist rose from below, winding around the rocks like smoke. On the other side stood an enormous gate of stone, its surface carved with strange runes that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Leora's breath caught. What is this place? Kale looked over his shoulder, eyes glowing faintly amber. Silver Hollow, the burial ground of the first alphas. Her pulse quickened. She'd heard of it only in whispers, the sacred ground where the moon's first chosen wolves were laid to rest, and where their spirits still lingered to guard their bloodline. No living wolf was supposed to enter without permission. He stepped closer to the gate, placing his palm against the runes. They pulsed faintly, responding to his touch. The mist thickened, curling around them like a living thing. Only those bound by ancient blood can pass, Kal murmured, but the gate has been dormant for years until tonight. The runes began to glow brighter, not from his touch, but from hers. Leora felt it before she understood it, a warmth blooming under her skin, spreading from her chest to her fingertips. The same hum she'd felt when her blood hit the ground earlier now resonated through her bones. The symbols on the gate flared silver white, and the air trembled with a low, vibrating hum. Kyle turned to her sharply. Laura, step back. I didn't do anything, she said, voice shaking. You are doing something, he said, eyes narrowing. It's responding to you. The gate split down the center with a sound like cracking stone. A gust of cold air rushed out, smelling of rain and old secrets. Beyond the opening lay a narrow passage, lined with glowing crystal veins that pulsed like a heartbeat. Kale's jaw tightened. No one's opened this path in over a century. Leora stepped closer, her bare feet brushing against damp soil. Then maybe it was waiting. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a quiet exhale, he followed her inside. The tunnel wound deep into the earth, its walls whispering faint echoes of forgotten words. As they walked, the crystals pulsed brighter, casting their faces in shifting shades of blue and silver. Leora could hear her own heartbeat echoing against the stone. What did you mean earlier? She finally asked. You said the moon chose me for what? Kale's expression was unreadable. Every few generations, the moon selects one of its bloodline. Not an alpha, not a Luna, but something between, a bridge. A bridge. He nodded. Between the living and the forgotten. Between what we are and what we were meant to be. She frowned. I don't understand. You will, he said quietly, when you see what lies ahead. They stepped into a cavern so vast it seemed to swallow the world. The ceiling was lost in darkness, and in the center stood a stone altar, cracked with age but still radiating power. Around it were carvings, wolves howling beneath the moon, warriors kneeling before a crowned figure whose eyes were carved from obsidian. Leora felt the hum in her chest grow stronger, almost painful now. The air thickened with energy. Kyle, she whispered. Something's calling me. He reached out instinctively, grabbing her wrist. Don't touch it. But it was too late. The crystals around them flared to life, flooding the cavern with blinding light. The hum became a roar, and then everything went still. When the light faded, Leora was no longer standing in the cavern. She was in a vision, surrounded by mist, the air heavy with the scent of moonflowers and ash. Before her stood a woman cloaked in silver, her eyes the color of molten gold. Her presence radiated both warmth and command. Daughter of the hollow moon, a woman said, her voice like wind over water. You carry the blood that was never meant to awaken. Leora's lips parted. Who are you? The woman smiled faintly. The first Luna, the keeper of vows your kind forgot. Leora's breath trembled. Why me? Because the blood of kings runs in your veins, the woman said, and because one vow still binds your fate to his. Kyle of the Black Ridge, she said, her tone both solemn and sorrowful. The Alpha who swore an oath to protect the moon's chosen, and then broke it. The world rippled. The vision began to dissolve. Wait, Leora shouted, reaching out, but the silver figure vanished like mist. The next thing she knew, she was back in the cavern, gasping. Kale was beside her, gripping her shoulders. Laura, what did you see? Her voice was barely a whisper. The first Luna. She said, You made a vow. Kale's hands froze. His expression hardened, pain flickering behind his eyes like lightning in a storm. That's impossible, he muttered. That vow was sealed long before you were born. Then why did she show it to me? Kyle stared at her for a long moment, then stepped back, running a hand through his hair. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because maybe the vow wasn't meant for me, but for the Alpha who comes after. The crystals dimmed, the hum fading into silence, and deep within the stone altar, something old stirred. Something that had been waiting for the blood of the chosen to return. Chapter 7. The Alpha's Oath. The night pressed heavy over Black Ridge. Clouds drifted past the moon like restless ghosts, and the forest murmured beneath the wind. Kyle hadn't slept since they returned from Silver Hollow. The echo of that blinding light still burned behind his eyes. He could still hear her voice, the first Luna, repeating those words that had no right to exist in the present, the Alpha who swore an oath to protect the moon's chosen, and then broke it. The phrase circled his mind like a wolf stalking prey. He sat alone in his study, a half-empty glass of amber liquor untouched beside him. The fire crackled in the hearth, painting his face in shades of gold and shadow. Papers, maps, and ancient scrolls were scattered across the desk. Among them lay the oldest of them all, the blood-sealed crest of his lineage, the mark of the moon oath. He had never dared to break the seal. Until now, Kyle's fingers hovered over the parchment, his pulse loud in his ears. His wolf, the part of him that lived beneath the human skin, stirred restlessly. It remembered something he did not. With a low breath, he broke the wax. A faint glow spread from the paper, illuminating the runes etched in dried silver blood. The letters shimmered like moonlight reflected on water. And as he read, a world shifted. He was no longer in his study. He was standing in a vast moonlit field, the air filled with the sound of wolves howling in perfect unison. Before him knelt a figure draped in white, the same woman Leora had seen, though Kyle didn't know her name yet. Her voice was soft but carried the weight of eternity. Kyle of the first bloodline, you stand as protector of the bridge between worlds. Do you accept the vow of the hollow moon? He, or rather, the Alpha who bore his name before him, lowered his head. I do. Then you swear, she continued, to guard her when she awakens, to shield her from the shadow that devours light, and to remember, when memory itself is taken from you, that the bond is not of flesh, but of soul. The Alpha's voice was solemn. So I swear. And as he spoke, a mark burned across his chest, a crescent and flame intertwined, bleeding light. Then the world fractured. Kale gasped and stumbled back, the vision shattering like glass. The parchment on his desk had turned to ash. His skin still burned where the mark had appeared in the vision. Only now it was real, glowing faintly through his shirt. The fire flickered violently, responding to his pulse. He pressed a trembling hand against his chest, the same vow, the same mark. A sound at the door made him turn sharply. Leora stood there, pale and hesitant, her eyes wide. Kyle, she whispered. I saw it too. He froze. What do you mean? When I touched the altar, I saw you, or someone who looked like you. He made the vow before the first Luna, and when she said, the bond cannot be broken, I felt, I don't know. Something inside me recognized you. The silence that followed was unbearable. The flames hissed softly, shadows trembling on the walls. Kale rose slowly from his chair. Leora, what you saw was real, she interrupted, stepping closer. Don't tell me it wasn't. He clenched his jaw, If it's true, then that means the oath has awakened again, which also means the shadow she spoke of is returning. The shadow! He turned toward the window outside. The forest stretched like a sea of ink beneath the moonlight. The wolves of the hollow moon once fought against it. A corruption that devoured our kind, body, mind, and soul. My ancestor sealed it beneath Silver Hollow. If it's stirring now, then I'm the reason, she said softly. Kyle turned sharply, eyes flashing gold. Number, you're the key. That's why the moon awakened you. Why you feel the pull toward the bloodline. Her breath hitched, and he hesitated. I'm the one bound to protect you, whether I want to or not. Their eyes met, an unspoken gravity pulling between them. The firelight danced across her face, catching the shimmer in her eyes. Kyle took a step closer, the air between them, charged, electric. Lyora, he said quietly, his voice rough. If that vow truly links us, then breaking it again could destroy more than just us. Then don't break it, she whispered. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her wrist, and instantly, their marks glowed, twin crescents flaring with silver light. The energy surged through them, hot and alive, binding soul to soul. Leora gasped, eyes widening. Kale gritted his teeth as the power pulsed between them, memories that weren't his flashing through his mind. Laughter, war, blood, love, and betrayal. Then, as suddenly as it came, the light faded. They stood there, breathless, staring at each other. What did you see? She asked, voice trembling. Kyle looked away, his voice low and unsteady. The end of the last vow, the Alpha who broke it, and the Luna who died because of it. Died. He nodded. She was killed protecting him, protecting me. The fire in the hearth dimmed, leaving only the moonlight spilling through the window. Leora stepped forward, her tone gentle but firm. Then maybe this time, the ending can be different. Kale met her gaze. And for the first time, there was no command in his eyes, only fear. If fate gives us that choice, he said quietly, we'll have to fight for it. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, and deep in the woods, something howled back. Chapter 8. Whispers beneath the moon. The moon hung low over the forest, veiled behind slow-moving clouds. The air was cool, restless, and thick with something that felt alive. Every gust of wind that threaded through the pines carried faint echoes, half whispers, half sighs, that seemed to call a single name, Leora. She awoke with a sharp breath, her pulse racing. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the embers in the fireplace. The mark on her wrist burned faintly beneath the skin, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She sat up slowly. The whispers hadn't stopped. They were soft, coaxing, neither malevolent nor kind, just there. Who's there? She whispered. The answer came in the form of silence, then a flicker of movement beyond the glass window. Her wolf stirred inside her, anxious and alert. The pull she'd felt since touching the altar had grown stronger each day. It wasn't just calling her anymore, it was leading her. She rose, slipped on her cloak, and left the room without a sound. Outside, the night was colder than she expected. Mist coiled between the trees, silver under the moonlight. The forest of Black Ridge was vast, wild, sacred, and ancient enough that every leaf seemed to carry memory. Leora's bare feet brushed against the damp earth as she followed the sound. It wasn't random, it had rhythm, direction. Her breath misted in the air, and the trees whispered like an audience holding its breath. Then, she heard it again. The vow must be fulfilled. She froze. Who are you? No answer. Only the rustling of branches, and then out of the mist she saw them. 3 figures cloaked in black stood near the riverbank. Their eyes glowed faintly silver beneath the hoods. One held a staff marked with the same crescent sigil that had burned on Kale's chest. You shouldn't be here, said the tallest of them, voice deep and hollow. The oath has not yet been claimed. Leora's throat went dry. What do you mean? The moon's chosen cannot linger in shadow. The alpha has bound himself, but the bond remains incomplete. Her pulse spiked. Kale, he carries the mark. But marks fade when hearts divide. Their words were both warning and prophecy. Leora took a cautious step back. The mist thickened, curling around her ankles like living smoke. Then the smallest figure lifted her head. Her face was half hidden by the hood, but her voice, fragile, young, and eerily familiar, made Leora's blood run cold. You will have to choose, she said softly. Between the bond and the blood. Leora blinked, and they were gone, back at the fortress. Kale stood in the council hall. The Alpha elders were gathered around the long table, the firelight reflecting off their gold-lined armor. Elder Rowan's voice cut through the air. You've brought a cursed woman into your pack, Kal. Do you know what this means? Kale's jaw tightened. She's not cursed. She bears the hollow mark, Rowan countered. The same mark that destroyed the last bloodline. You risk everything for her. I don't answer to fear, Kyle said coldly. You answer to the council, Rowan snapped, and to the moon's law. If her awakening brings the shadow back, it will consume all of us. The room grew tense. Every eye turned toward him, waiting. Kyle's wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless, protective. She's under my protection, he said at last, his tone low but final. No one touches her. Rowan's eyes narrowed. Even if she becomes the key to your undoing, Kyle didn't blink, then I'll fall with her. The words hung heavy, shocking even to him. The council murmured among themselves, voices rising and falling like the hiss of snakes. But before anyone could speak again, the wind outside howled loud, violent, unnatural. The torches flickered. A low growl rumbled in Kyle's throat. He felt it, the same energy from the altar. It was near. He turned sharply, instinct screaming. She's not in her room. Leora was running through the woods, breath sharp in her chest, as something unseen followed close behind. The whispers had changed, no longer calling her, but warning her. It wakes, it remembers the vow, it wants the Luna's blood. Her foot caught on a root, and she stumbled, catching herself on the wet ground. Her wolf begged her to shift, but she hesitated. The moon was too high, the pull too strong. She could lose herself to it. Not Kale, not wolf, something else. Then came the sound, a growl that wasn't entirely animal. Leora backed away, her pulse hammering. The shadows moved with purpose, and out of them stepped a creature she had never seen before. Its eyes burned with red fire, and its body was a twisting mass of fur and smoke. The shadow wolf, it tilted its head, sniffing the air, and growled a single word, her name, Laura. Her blood froze. She turned to run. But before she could move, a blur of silver and black collided with the creature, slamming it into the ground. Kale, his wolf form was massive, his fur streaked with moonlight. The impact shook the ground. They tore into each other with snarls that echoed across the forest. Claws, teeth, blood, Kale, she screamed. The shadow lunged, but Kale was faster. He pinned it, jaws locking around its throat, his growl vibrating through the air. For a moment, it seemed over until the creature's body dissolved into smoke, vanishing into the mist. Kyle shifted back, chest heaving, blood streaking his arm. Are you hurt? He demanded, voice rough. She shook her head, trembling. It knew my name. Kyle's eyes darkened. Then it's begun, the shadow, he nodded. The same one that destroyed the first Luna. It's not just a curse, it's a memory that feeds on regret, and now it's hunting you. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why me? He met her gaze, his own heavy with the weight of unspoken truth. Because you are her. Chapter 9. The Luna's Echo. The world shimmered between waking and dream. Leora floated in the half-space between sleep and awareness, her breath shallow, her heartbeat slow. Somewhere far away, she could still hear the echo of Kale's growl, and the whisper of her name on the wind. But here, wherever here was, time felt suspended, folded in on itself like layers of moonlight. The ground beneath her was soft and silver. A vast lake stretched before her, smooth as glass, reflecting a sky without stars. Mist hung low over the water, curling into shapes that seemed to remember her. Then she heard it. "You should not have come this far." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, familiar, melodic, but cold. Leora turned, and her breath caught. A woman stood on the opposite bank, barefoot, her gown a flowing trail of white silk that shimmered like frost. Her eyes, pale and distant, were identical to Leora's own. Leora took a step forward, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head, as if studying a reflection. "You already know." Leora's stomach nodded. "You're me." "Once," the woman said softly, "before you were born of mortal blood, before you turned your back on the vow." Laura shook her head. "What vow? I don't understand." The woman moved closer, her image rippling like water disturbed. "You swore to guard the balance between light and shadow, to hold the bond that keeps the Alpha's blood from turning feral, Kale, yes? The one who carries the moon's mark, in every lifetime he finds you, and in every lifetime he loses you." The words hit her like a cold wind. "Loses me?" The woman's expression softened, almost pitying. "You died by his hand once, and in doing so bound your soul to his. That is the curse." Leora's throat went dry. "No, that can't be true." The woman's gaze turned hard, shimmering with old pain. "Every choice has a cost. You wished to be free of the bond, and so the moon took your wolf. You walk half alive, half forgotten, and now the shadow seeks to finish what began that night." "The shadow wolf," she nodded. "It is not a creature, it is what remains when love becomes punishment. It feeds on regret, and it will not stop until one of you breaks the cycle." Leora stepped closer to the edge of the water. "How do I stop it?" The woman smiled faintly, but there was no joy in it. "You must remember all of it." The lake began to glow, bright and blinding. The surface shattered into fragments of memory, flashes of a temple, silver chains, Kale kneeling before her with blood on his hands. The echo of a promise made under the moon: "If I ever lose you again, I will find you, even if it means burning the world." The memory burned through her, too vivid, too real. Pain lanced through her chest, and she gasped, falling to her knees. The world around her cracked like glass. "Wait, don't go," she cried. But the other woman was already fading. Her voice lingered, soft as a fading breath. "When the moon bleeds, the vow will demand its price. Choose wisely, Leora." Then everything went dark. She woke with a start, drenched in sweat, her breath ragged. The early dawn light filtered through the curtains of Kyle's chamber. She wasn't sure how she'd gotten there. Kyle sat beside the bed, his elbows on his knees, his eyes shadowed. He looked exhausted, but when she stirred, his gaze snapped up. "You were calling out in your sleep," he said quietly. "You said my name." Her pulse quickened. "I saw her," she whispered. He frowned. "Who?" "Myself," she said, voice trembling. "Or someone who looked like me," she said. "I died once, that we both did." Kyle's body went still. The flicker of emotion in his eyes was enough recognition. Guilt, fear, he exhaled slowly. "You weren't supposed to remember yet." Her heart lurched. "You knew." He looked away. "Only pieces." The elders spoke of a Luna whose spirit bound itself to the Alpha bloodline, reborn again and again. "I didn't want to believe it until you saw the mark," he nodded. "The same as before, the same as when she died." Leora rose, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "So that's what this is, a curse. We're just trapped in some endless punishment." "No," Kyle said quickly, standing. "It's not that simple." "Then tell me what is simple," she snapped, voice breaking. Because every time I think I'm starting to understand who I am, the world shifts again. You keep secrets, the elders whisper in riddles, and now I'm dreaming of dying in your arms. Kale's jaw clenched. He took a step forward, then stopped himself. Because that's what happened. Silence crashed between them. Leora stared at him, her heartbeat thunderous. You killed me. His voice was raw when he answered. To save you, she recoiled, shaking her head. You don't save someone by killing them. Kale's eyes burned with anguish. You don't understand. You were losing control. The bond was consuming you. You begged me to end it. And when I couldn't, the moon did. Tears blurred her vision. You could have told me. I wanted to protect you, he said hoarsely. But maybe protection was just another form of fear. The air between them felt electric, dangerous. Then Leora's mark began to burn again, bright, pulsing, alive. Kal's chest answered with its own glow. For a moment, the bond felt like a living thing, threading between them, pulling, demanding. Leora gasped, her knees buckling. But Kyle caught her before she fell. Their skin touched, light flared. Images rushed through both of them. Past lives, vows, battles fought under twin moons, lips meeting in blood and promise. The world dissolved into white. When the light faded, Kyle was gone. Leora stood alone in the middle of the room, the air still humming with the echo of what they'd just seen. On the floor, where Kyle had been moments ago, a single silver feather shimmered faintly before fading into nothing. And from somewhere deep within the fortress, a horn sounded low, ancient, foreboding. The shadow had returned. Chapter 10, Blood Moon Rising. The horn echoed through the valley like a cry torn from the bones of the earth. Leora stumbled toward the balcony, clutching the cold stone railing as the sound reverberated across the forest. Below, the pack's fortress came alive, wolves rushing through the courtyards, warriors grabbing weapons from the armory, alarms flaring across the borders of Black Ridge. The blood moon had begun to rise. It wasn't supposed to appear for another cycle, yet there it was, climbing the sky, huge, swollen, its light bleeding crimson through the mist. The ancient prophecy whispered of this. When the moon bleeds before its time, the shadow awakens from the bones of the betrayed. Her hands trembled. Kale, she whispered, but his presence was gone. The bond still hummed faintly under her skin, but it felt distant, muffled, as if something or someone was severing the thread between them. Footsteps pounded up the staircase. Commander Riven burst into the room, his armor half-buckled, eyes sharp. Luna, I'm not your Luna, she cut in automatically. He ignored her deflection. The southern perimeter's breached. The scouts say it's not rogues, it's something else. Shadows moving like smoke. The words twisted in her gut. How long until they reach the fortress? Minutes. Laura took a steadying breath, forcing the panic down. She had been powerless once, helpless, forgotten. Not anymore. Then we fight. Riven hesitated. Kale's orders were to evacuate. Kale isn't here, she snapped. That makes me the highest-ranking wolf in this stronghold. Prepare the defensive line. Riven's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, Luna. The title struck something deep inside her. She didn't correct him this time. The fortress walls thrummed with tension. Torches flickered, the scent of burning resin mixing with the metallic tang of fear. Wolves shifted in synchronized lines, their eyes glowing amber in the darkness. Leora stood at the front of the gate, wind tugging at her hair. The crimson light bathed her skin in shades of scarlet and silver. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the drums, steady, rising, inevitable. Then came the silence, and from that silence, movement. Shadows slithered from the tree line, dark as oil, shapeless yet alive. They writhed across the ground, splitting into dozens, then hundreds of forms. For a second, they looked almost human before their faces dissolved into nothing. The first attack came swift. A shadow, Wolf lunged, its form solidifying in the air. Leora ducked, rolled, and struck with the silver dagger she'd taken from Kale's study. The blade cut through the creature's chest. It screamed, a sound like tearing metal, before collapsing into smoke. More followed. The air filled with howls and screams, claws striking steel, fire flashing across the battlements. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, desperate to surface. But she hesitated. Ever since her awakening, her transformation had been unstable. One wrong push, and she could lose control completely. Then she heard it, a child's scream. Without thinking, Leora spun toward the sound. A young Omega cornered by a shadow creature near the stables. Her instincts surged forward like wildfire. "Move!" she shouted, running full speed. The wolf inside her roared to life. Her body shifted mid-leap, bones cracking, fur bursting from skin, eyes glowing silver. She hit the ground as a wolf larger than she'd ever been before. Power flooded her limbs, raw and ancient. The shadow snarled, but she was faster. One strike, one bite. The creature dissolved into mist, its scream swallowed by the wind. When it was over, the courtyard was chaos, wolves clashing with darkness, fire lighting the night like a living storm. Then, above it all, a deeper howl rose, a sound that froze the blood of every living creature. It wasn't Kyle's voice, it was something older. The shadow alpha, Leora's fur bristled. Her instincts screamed to flee, but she stood her ground. Across the field, the mist thickened, parting only when the figure emerged, a massive black wolf with eyes like burning coal. Its presence felt ancient, familiar, like a memory she had tried to bury. When it spoke, the sound was inside her head. "You think this is your fight, child of the moon?" Her wolf growled in defiance. "You carry her scent, her power. You are the key and the lock." The shadow stepped closer, its form flickering between wolf and man. "Kale's blood binds you to me. When he broke the vow, he set me free." Leora snarled, circling him. "You're lying. Am I?" The creature's grin was a smear of darkness. "Then tell me, where is your precious alpha now?" Her pulse faltered. She could still feel the faint trace of Kale's bond, but it was flickering, fading fast. And for the first time, fear truly sank its claws into her. The battle raged long into the night. When dawn broke, smoke rose from the burned edges of the forest. Half the fortress lay in ruins. The shadow had vanished, leaving nothing but whispers and ash. Leora stood on the balcony once more, her body aching, her wolf barely contained beneath her skin. Her hands trembled as she looked toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond that line of trees, Kale was still alive. She knew it, but she also knew something else. Whatever had taken him was connected to the shadow, and the vow that once protected them now bound them both to destruction. She turned to Riven, her voice low but unshaken. "Ready the hunters, we're going after him." Riven hesitated. "You're wounded, so is he," she said. "And if we wait, we lose him. I'm done waiting." Her eyes caught the reflection of the rising sun, half crimson, half gold. The blood moon was gone, but the war it awakened had just begun. Chapter 11. The Hunt for the Lost Alpha. The forest swallowed sound. Leora led the hunting party into the valley of mist long before dawn. The light had not yet reached the horizon, and what little of the moon remained was veiled behind shifting clouds. Every step they took stirred the fog, twisting it into ghostly tendrils that clung to armor and skin. Riven walked beside her, his wolf senses sharp, his expression grim. Behind them, 3 elite trackers from the Crescent Guard moved in silence, their eyes glowing faintly gold. They all knew the stories. No one entered the Darkwood and returned unchanged. But this time, they weren't just hunting an enemy. They were hunting their alpha. Leora's wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. The faint bond that connected her to Kale pulsed like a heartbeat buried under miles of earth. There, but weak. He's alive, she told herself again and again, each repetition a prayer disguised as certainty. Riven broke the silence. The blood moon's energy still lingers. Whatever took him left a trail, but it's faint. I can feel it, Leora murmured. Her gaze drifted toward the fog curling between the trees. It's not just his scent, it's something deeper, like the forest remembers him. Riven shot her a wary look. You mean his wolf? No, she whispered, his soul. They walked for hours, deeper into the heart of the dark wood, where the trees grew thick as stone pillars and the light dimmed to a perpetual twilight. The air smelled of iron and rain. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. At last, they reached the river, a black ribbon cutting through the valley. Its surface was still, reflective as glass, but when Leora looked closer, she didn't see her reflection. She saw Kyle. He was kneeling by the water's edge, head bowed, his body wreathed in mist. Chains of moonlight bound his wrists to the ground, burning faintly with each breath. Kyle, she shouted, stepping forward. And the vision shattered. Riven caught her arm before she could fall in. Careful, it's an illusion. No, Leora gasped, chest heaving. It's him, he's here. The forest is showing me where. Her mark burned through her sleeve, a pale silver glow that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The trees responded. Branches creaking, roots shifting underfoot. Riven's grip tightened. This place feeds on emotion. It'll use what you love against you. Then it knows exactly how to hurt me, she said softly, pulling free. Hours later, they made camp beneath a hollow ridge. The hunters set wards around the perimeter, while Leora sat apart, her eyes fixed on the flickering fire. Every time she blinked, she saw Kyle again, his face pale, his expression torn between rage and sorrow. She remembered his voice before the battle, the way he had whispered against her hair. If I don't come back, don't look for me. She had promised she wouldn't, and here she was, breaking it anyway. A soft rustle broke her thoughts. Riven crouched beside her, offering a flask. You should rest. She shook her head. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I hear him. Riven hesitated. Laura, if the shadow took him, he might not be the same when we find him. Her gaze snapped to his. Then I'll remind him who he is, he sighed. That's exactly what the Luna in the old stories said. And what happened to her, she succeeded, Riven said quietly. But it cost her everything. Leora's heart twisted. Then I'll pay the same price if I have to. That night she dreamed again. This time she was running barefoot, the forest glowing with cold blue light. The air was alive with whispers, voices overlapping like the rustle of leaves. He waits beneath the hollow moon. He bleeds where the light cannot reach. To free him, you must break what binds you both. She stumbled into a clearing. Kyle stood at its center, his body half shadow, half man, eyes burning faintly crimson. When he spoke, his voice echoed through her mind. You shouldn't have come. Her throat tightened. You told me that once before. I didn't listen then either. He took a step toward her, the chains dragging across the ground with a metallic scrape. The shadow feeds on what's between us, every memory, every touch. It turns it into power. Then let it choke on it, she whispered. He stopped. You can't save me, Leora. You can only join me. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You're still fighting, I can feel it. His expression flickered, pain cutting through the darkness. If you stay, it'll take you too. Then we burn together, she said, stepping forward, her hand reaching for his. Their fingers brushed, and the dream shattered into a blinding flash of light. Leora woke with a gasp. The fire was out. The camp was silent. The air around her pulsed with unnatural stillness. Then she heard it. A low rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat beneath the soil. The forest floor glowed faintly, veins of silver light spreading outward in all directions. Riven stumbled from his tent, eyes wide. What's happening? Forest's waking up, Leora whispered. She rose to her feet as the light formed a path leading north. toward the heart of the Darkwood. Kyle was calling. Without waiting, she shifted, fur bursting from her skin, bones snapping as her wolf took over. She sprinted into the darkness, the silver light guiding her steps. Behind her, the others followed, their howls rising into the dawn. The trees bent as she passed, whispering her name, the wind carrying a single phrase, "The bond must break, or the world will." But Leora didn't slow, not until she saw it, the massive obsidian gate carved into the mountain ahead, pulsing faintly with Kale's energy. She stopped, heart hammering, her fur bristling with the weight of destiny. She was close, too close to turn back now. Chapter 12, Beneath the Hollow Moon. The mountain breathed. Every step Leora took echoed in a rhythm that didn't belong to her. The air grew colder, denser, threaded with whispers that bled through the walls of stone. The obsidian gate before her glowed faintly, silver veins pulsing like veins beneath skin. Her wolf resisted every instinct that told her to run. But she didn't. She couldn't. Kale's presence was everywhere, his scent, his voice, the echo of his laughter buried beneath the mountain's groan. She pressed her hand against the gate. It was warm, alive. And then it opened. A torrent of air rushed past her, cold as death, her vision blurred. The ground vanished beneath her feet. She fell, not through space, but through memories. She landed in moonlight. The world around her was the ruins of a throne room, shattered and half-consumed by shadow. Silver banners hung in tatters, and where the royal sigil once gleamed, now only a burn mark remained. At the center stood Kale. Not the Kale she knew. This one was younger, unscarred, cloaked in silver armor. His eyes were bright, not haunted. He stood before a mirror of black water, and within its reflection she saw another man, identical, yet wrong. The reflection's grin was sharp, his voice serpentine. "You can't keep me buried forever," the reflection said. Kyle's hand trembled around the hilt of his blade. "You are not me." "No," the voice purred. "I'm the part of you that remembers what power feels like." Laura watched from the edge of the hall, her heart pounding. This wasn't memory. It was Kyle's mind, his prison, his battle. And he was losing. The reflection lunged, a blade of shadow forming in its hand. Kyle blocked the strike, sparks of silver and black scattering like starlight. They fought with mirrored precision, every slash, every movement identical, as if Kyle was battling his own echo. "Kyle!" Leora shouted, running forward. The sound shattered the illusion for a moment. Kyle's eyes widened. "Leora, no, get out. Heal," but it was too late. The reflection turned toward her, smiling. "Ah," it said softly, "the girl who carries his light." She froze as its gaze pierced her, seeing not her body but her soul. "You burn so brightly," the reflection whispered. "I could devour you and end his pain." Kale snarled, stepping between them. "You'll touch her over my dead body. That can be arranged." The shadow Kyle raised his hand, and darkness exploded outward. The walls trembled, the mirror shattered, and Leora was thrown back into a sea of black mist. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on cold stone. Kyle was kneeling beside her, bloody, shaking, but alive. His hand cupped her face. "You shouldn't have followed me here. You think I could stay behind while you fade into nothing," she said weakly. "You don't understand," he whispered. "This place, it feeds on us. Every time you reach for me, it pulls me deeper." She grabbed his wrist. "Then let it pull us both. I'd rather drown with you than breathe without you." He stared at her, anguish etched into every line of his face. "You can't mean that." "I do," she said, "because I know you do the same." Something broke in him then, his forehead pressed against hers, breaths mingling. "I swore I'd protect you even from myself. And I swore I'd find you," she said. Even in hell, the ground shuddered violently beneath them. A crack of light tore through the floor, splitting the chamber. From the fissure, a voice rose, 1,000 tones speaking as one. "The bond defies the moon's decree. One must break for the other to survive. Leora's mark blazed across her skin, burning silver-hot pain shot through her chest as Kale's blood answered. His mark pulsing in sync. "Don't listen to it," Kyle said through clenched teeth. "It's trying to divide us." Her body convulsed, the energy nearly too much to bear. "Kyle, I can't." He caught her face between his hands. "Look at me, Leora. Breathe with me. Remember who you are." Her eyes fluttered open, locking on his. For a heartbeat, the world fell away. The pain, the voices, the curse, they all vanished. All that remained was him. Kyle pressed his lips against hers. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate. Two souls trying to anchor each other against oblivion. Light exploded from their joined hands, tearing through the darkness. The shadow screamed. A sound that wasn't just heard but felt, a vibration that rattled the bones of the world. Then silence. When the light faded, they were no longer in the throne room. They stood beneath a vast sky, stars scattered like shards of glass. The hollow moon hung low, cracked and bleeding silver light. Kyle stared at it, breathing hard. "We broke through." Laura's legs gave out, and he caught her. "You said one of us would have to break," she whispered. "Which one?" He looked down at her, eyes softening. "Maybe neither. Maybe that's what they were afraid of." The wind rose, carrying whispers of the world they'd left behind. For the first time in days, the air didn't taste of ash. Leora rested her head against his chest. "We're not done yet, are we?" Kyle smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not even close." Above them, the moon pulsed once, like a heartbeat, before fading into calm light. But far beneath the mountain, deep within the fractured mirror, a single reflection moved and smiled. Chapter 13. The Mirror That Lies. Dawn came late that morning. Or maybe it never came at all. The sky above the ridge bled faint streaks of red through layers of unmoving clouds. The forest slept beneath a shroud of fog, every tree a silent sentinel. The hollow moon still lingered, pale and cracked, refusing to fade. Leora woke to the sound of her own heartbeat. Her skin was cold, damp with dew. Kyle was already awake, crouched by a small fire, his back turned to her. For a moment, she only watched him. The way the light flickered against his scars, the way his breath steadied itself as though suppressing pain. There was something in the air between them, familiar and yet wrong. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "Kale," he didn't look at her. "You should rest. We move when the fog lifts." Her brows furrowed. "You didn't sleep." He shook his head slightly. "Didn't need to." That wasn't true. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the faint tremor in his hand as he tossed another branch into the fire. He was holding something back, something heavy enough to warp the air around him. Then she saw it. A faint shimmer just behind him, like a heat mirage, except colder. A second shadow. It followed the shape of his movement perfectly, but when Kyle turned, the shadow didn't. It stood still, head tilted, watching her. Leora's breath caught. "Kyle," she said carefully, "don't move." He froze. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, reacting to the sharp command in her tone. "What is it?" Her eyes didn't leave the shimmer. "There's something behind you." Slowly, Kyle turned, and the shimmer vanished, melting into the mist silence. Only the crackle of fire. Then a whisper carried on the wind. "Do you know which one of you is real?" Leora spun around. The voice wasn't Kale's yet. It came from everywhere, echoing through the fog, curling into her ear like smoke. Kale's eyes darkened. "Show yourself." "Why? You already wear my face." A figure stepped out from the mist. It was Kale, and it wasn't. This version of him looked cleaner, sharper, every movement too precise. His smile too calm, his eyes silver, not gray, glimmered with unearthly light. Leora's wolf recoiled instantly. "Not him." The real Kyle growled low. "I killed you, did you?" The reflection tilted its head. Or did you simply bury me in her? Its gaze slid toward Leora, and something deep in her chest began to ache. Her mark flared under her skin on silver, now faintly blackened at the edges. You felt it, didn't you? It whispered. Every time he touches you, every time you dream, I am the part of him that lives inside you now. Leora staggered back, shaking her head. You're lying. Am I? The reflection smiled, stepping closer. Tell me, Leora, when you look at him, do you see him, or do you see the man you wanted him to be? Kyle lunged before it could finish, claws slicing through mist. But the reflection didn't dodge, it dissolved, and reformed behind him, whispering against his ear. You think you can protect her from me? You brought me back the moment you kissed her? Kyle roared, the sound tearing through the forest. The fire exploded outward, sparks scattering like golden dust. Stop, Leora shouted, but the two Kyles were already locked together, silver and shadow, light and dark, claw against claw. It wasn't just a fight, it was a reflection warping reality. The forest trembled. The ground split open beneath their feet, and the air shimmered with broken time. Each strike seemed to echo across two worlds, the real and the mirrored. Leora's vision blurred. Every time one of them hit the ground, she saw double the same scene, repeating, distorting. Which one was which? The reflection turned to her mid-battle, eyes flashing silver. You can end this, Leora. Choose, one of us must fade. Her heartbeat stuttered. I can't. You must, or neither of us will survive. Kale's voice cut through the chaos. Don't listen to him, but the reflection's words had already coiled around her heart. What if he's right? What if I'm keeping the wrong one alive? A scream tore through her chest as the two merged light-devouring shadow. The world convulsed once, then went utterly still. When the silence broke, the fire was gone. The mist was gone. Only Kale remained, kneeling in the dirt, panting. Leora crawled to him, grabbing his shoulders. Kyle, talk to me. Who are you? He looked up slowly. His eyes were wrong, not silver, not gray, both. I'm here, he said. But even his voice sounded doubled, two tones overlapping in one body. Her pulse froze. Which one? He smiled faintly. Does it matter? The ground beneath them rippled, as if the world itself had taken a breath. Then the sky began to fracture. Crimson light leaked through the cracks, illuminating Kale's face in shades of nightmare. Leora reached for him, but her hand passed through his shoulder for a split second, just long enough for her to see what lay beneath. A mirror, endless and black. Chapter 14. The Wolf Between Worlds. There was no dawn this time. Only an endless horizon where the sky bled into the earth, like a wound that refused to close. Leora stood barefoot on the cracked ground. The air was too thin. When she breathed, it tasted like dust and metal, sharp enough to burn her throat. The trees had turned to silhouettes, their branches whispering names she almost recognized. Kyle. The name echoed inside her skull like a heartbeat. But when she tried to follow the sound, the world shifted under her feet. The forest folded. The moon trembled, and she found herself standing before the same mirror that had devoured him. Only this time there was no reflection, just a dark surface pulsing faintly, as if something alive pressed against it from the other side. Her hand hovered above the glass. A tremor ran through her body, not from fear, but from the unbearable pull, like gravity itself wanted her closer. Kale. Her whisper fractured the silence. From the mirror came a low growl, not human, not fully wolf. Something caught between both, ancient, resonant, wrong. Then the glass rippled, and she saw it. A figure, curled within the darkness, Kale's shape, but stripped of form. His skin glowed faintly, veins of silver threading through shadow. His eyes opened, and for a heartbeat, she thought he saw her. Lyra, his voice was distant, distorted by layers of reality. Don't come closer. A wall between worlds is cracking. I can't hold it much longer. She shook her head violently. I'm not leaving you again. You don't understand. If you cross, you'll wake the one beneath me. The one beneath? But before he could answer, the mirror convulsed. 1,000 images flared across its surface scenes she'd buried. Her first transformation, her mother's eyes before death, the night Kyle rejected her, the mark searing into her skin, and behind it all, a howl so deep it split the ground. The mirror shattered. Leora was thrown backward into the void. She fell through air, through time, through herself. When she landed, she wasn't in the forest anymore. She was inside the pack house, except it was burned down to its skeleton. Ash clung to the air. The moon above was blood red, dripping light instead of giving it. From the hallway came a slow set of footsteps, bare, deliberate, echoing. Leora turned and froze. Kyle stood there, but not the Kyle she knew. This one's eyes were empty, his skin pale, his movements too smooth. He smiled faintly, though his mouth didn't move. "Why do you keep following ghosts?" he asked softly. "I'm not," she said, her breath trembling. "You're real." He stepped closer. "Am I?" He touched her wrist, and his hand passed through her skin like smoke. The touch left behind a faint mark, glowing faintly red. "You're the one who keeps me alive," he whispered. "But the more you hold on, the more I fade." Her throat constricted. "Then tell me what to do. Let go." "No." Her voice broke, raw and desperate. "If I let go, you disappear. If you don't, you will." The ground beneath her cracked again. This time, the fissures glowed white. Through them, she saw movement, something colossal, sleeping beneath the world. Her wolf stirred violently, claws raking at her chest as if trying to get out. The air thickened, the shadows crawled. The sleeping thing beneath her shifted and exhaled. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying with it a single scent, rain and blood and Kyle. Leora dropped to her knees. Her reflection shimmered in the glass shards scattered on the floor. Only it wasn't her. It was the wolf between worlds. Her fur black as ink, her eyes bleeding light, and when it spoke, it was in her voice. "He was never yours to save, Leora. He was born to destroy you." Her hand trembled. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Then why do you still wear his mark?" Leora looked down. The bond mark on her neck had spread, its veins crawling across her collarbone, glowing like embers. Her wolf smiled from the reflection. "You thought love made you stronger. It only made you a doorway." Then the world shattered again. She woke gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was dark, but real this time. Kyle was beside her, asleep, his breathing steady. For a moment she thought she'd dreamed it all, until she saw the mark black and pulsing, spreading from his chest to hers, connecting them like veins of the same heart. She reached out, fingers shaking. The mark pulsed once more, and she heard it faintly deep beneath the surface of his heartbeat. The wolf beneath still sleeps, but not for long. Chapter 15. The Blood That Remembers. The storm had been brewing all night. By dawn, the forest looked as if it had been carved out of smoke and thunder. Leora stood at the edge of the ancient grove, the place no wolf dared to step into since the time of the first moon. The trees leaned inward, their roots twisted like veins clutching the soil. The air shimmered faintly, heavy with the scent of rain and iron. She could still feel the mark between her and Kala pulsing alive. It wasn't just a bond anymore, it was a rhythm, an echo of something ancient moving beneath her skin. Behind her, Kala's voice broke the silence. "Are you sure about this?" She didn't turn. "You said you wanted to know the truth." "This is where it begins." He stepped closer, boots crushing the damp leaves. "And if the truth kills us both." She let out a shaky breath. "Then maybe that's what was always meant to happen." They reached the altar before sunrise. It wasn't carved stone like she expected. It was bone, white and curved, forming a circle half buried in moss. Symbols pulsed faintly across its surface, as if breathing. Leora knelt beside it, running her fingers over the marks. The ancients used to call this place the Pulse. Every Alpha's bloodline was sealed here so their memories wouldn't die. Kale frowned. You're saying my blood remembers? She met his gaze. Not just yours, mine too. He crouched beside her, his scent mingling with the cold air, dark cedar, rain, and something deeper that always made her heart stumble. When I look at you, he murmured, I see memories that don't belong to either of us. Leora's chest tightened, because they don't. They belong to the first wolves. The wind rose suddenly. The forest whispered as if waking from centuries of sleep. Leora felt the pulse in her neck flare, hot, insistent. Her wolf stirred, restless, growling beneath her ribs. Kale reached for her hand, but she pulled away. It has to be blood, she whispered. What? The ritual. It only answers to blood. Before he could stop her, she drew the dagger from her belt and sliced her palm. The blood spilled onto the altar, glowing faintly as it touched the bone. The symbols flared to life. Then she pressed the blade into Kale's hand. You too, he hesitated. Laura, do it. He did. His blood joined hers on the bone, and the forest went silent. No wind, no breath, only the sound of the altar drinking. Then the ground trembled. The blood spread, forming a circle of light around them. Shadows peeled off the trees, swirling inward until they formed shapes. Wolves, hundreds of them translucent and silver. Eyed, their howls rose in unison, shaking the air. Kyle staggered back. What is this? The memory, Leora whispered. Her eyes glowed faintly, her voice no longer fully hers. They remember the first betrayal, the first rejection. Her body convulsed, the mark on her chest flared crimson. Kale rushed to her, gripping her shoulders, but she felt impossibly heavy, like something inside her was waking. Lyra, look at me. It's not. Me, she gasped, her eyes rolling back. It's her. The air exploded with light. When it cleared, she was standing at the center of the grove, surrounded by ancient wolves. Only she wasn't Leora anymore. Her hair streamed white, her pupils slit like a predator's, her voice carrying a resonance that didn't belong to this time. You took my mate, the voice said through her. It was layered, echoing across centuries. You bound me in chains of blood, but blood remembers. Kale fell to his knees. Laura, fight it, her gaze fixed on him, cold, divine, merciless. You wear his face, she whispered. You carry the blood of the Alpha who caged me. Then kill me, he said hoarsely. If that's what you want. For a heartbeat, the air crackled with tension. Her claws shimmered into existence, silver and pulsing. But then something broke inside her, her human voice pushing through. Kale, her claws trembled. The red light flickered. The forest fell utterly still. Then, all at once, she collapsed into his arms. When she woke again, the grove was quiet. The bone altar was gone, melted into the earth. Kale sat beside her, bleeding from his hand, watching the dawn rise. She turned weakly. Did I? He shook his head. You stopped it. Then why do I still feel her? He looked at her, eyes full of something she couldn't name. Because she's part of you now, and maybe she always was. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. What happens now? Kale's jaw tightened. Now we prepare. Whatever woke tonight wasn't just her. From the forest, a faint echo answered him, low, ancient, and hungry. The wolves between worlds had begun to stir. Chapter 16, Echoes of the Moonbond. The night after the ritual, the moon hung low and swollen, an unblinking eye watching the forest below. Its light did not soothe. It listened. Leora sat by the window of the cabin Kale had brought her to. Every time the wind passed through the trees, she swore she could hear whispers, low, feminine, layered with centuries of grief. Her reflection in the window wasn't fully hers anymore. The silver in her irises deepened every night. The mark at her collarbone glowed faintly beneath her shirt, pulsing in rhythm with something distant, like a heartbeat she couldn't find. Behind her, Kyle stirred awake. "You haven't slept." His voice was rough, still edged with exhaustion. He'd been wounded by the ritual, though he wouldn't admit how deeply. "I can't," she whispered. "When I close my eyes, I see her." Kale moved closer, his shadow blending with hers on the floorboards. "Describe her." Leora turned slowly, her hair falling over her shoulders like a veil of darkness. "She's not human. Her face changes every time I try to remember. Sometimes she looks like me. Sometimes she looks like you." Kyle's brows furrowed. "She's part of the bond. The moon bond was meant to merge the alpha bloodlines. Maybe she's the echo of the first one." "She speaks to me," Leora said softly. "And tonight she said your name." The silence stretched between them, fragile, trembling. Outside, the forest shivered. Kyle crossed the room, each step measured, his scent filling the space earth, musk, something that grounded her even as the world tilted. "Leora," he said quietly, "the bond between us, it's changing. I can feel your heartbeat even when I'm away." She looked down at her hands, flexing her fingers. "It's more than that. When you dream, I see it." He froze. "You've been in my dreams." She nodded, her voice small. "The fire, the battle, the woman in chains. I saw all of it." Kale's jaw tensed. "That wasn't just a dream." He turned toward the window, his reflection fractured by the moonlight. "The woman you saw was my ancestor's mate. She died in that grove we awakened. And she's inside me," Leora said. It wasn't a question. He faced her again, eyes shadowed. "Maybe she never left the bond." Leora's skin prickled as the wind outside howled, carrying with it the faint scent of ozone and wolf blood. The moonlight thickened, spilling across the floorboards like liquid silver. She felt something pulling inside her, a tether stretching from Kale's chest to her own. Her breath quickened. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Kale's pupils dilated. Yes, the air vibrated between them. A low hum began to build, like a song beneath the skin. Leora's wolf stirred, responding instinctively, her pulse syncing with his. Kale took another step closer, his hand hovering near her cheek. "The moon bond is reacting. It's merging us." Her throat tightened. "Then why does it feel like it's burning?" "Because we're fighting it." He cupped her face, his palm warm against her cool skin. The moment their eyes met, everything else, the forest, the night, the cabin, faded into a blur, the world tilted. She saw flashes, his past bleeding into hers, a battlefield, a child crying, a golden wolf standing over a body. Then her own memories answered, a mother's scream, a burning house, a pack insignia torn in half. When the visions faded, Kyle was trembling. "Leora," he whispered, "our ancestors were never supposed to be together. They were enemies." She swallowed hard, her lips pale. "Then why do we feel like this?" His thumb brushed over the mark glowing at her throat. "Because fate doesn't care about history, only balance." The tension between them snapped. Leora took a step back, but the bond yanked her forward, her body colliding with his. The contact was electric heat and shadow and everything unspoken between them. She gasped as the mark on her neck flared, glowing white-hot. Kale caught her by the waist, his breath harsh against her ear. "If we keep fighting it, it will destroy us," he murmured. "Then what happens if we stop fighting?" He hesitated. "Then it consumes us." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The air between them pulsed like a heartbeat. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and pressed it to his chest. "Then maybe," she said, "we see what happens." The moment their marks aligned, a surge of light tore through the cabin, blinding, searing, holy. Their wolves howled in unison, not in pain, but recognition. When the light faded, they were on the floor, tangled in moonlight and breath. Kyle's hand was still gripping hers. The mark between them had changed, no longer two separate sigils, but a single intertwined symbol that pulsed faintly with silver light. Leora looked at it, dazed. What did we just do? Kale's voice was low, reverent, shaken. We didn't complete the bond, we awakened it. He met her gaze, something raw and ancient flickering behind his eyes. And now the moon will want what's hers. Chapter 17. The Call of the Silver Veil. The first sign came with a wind. It wasn't a natural breeze. It slithered through the cracks of the cabin like a whisper with purpose. Leora stirred from her uneasy sleep, the sheets tangled around her legs. Her breathing quickened as a faint silver light bled through the walls. She wasn't dreaming. She was being called. A voice, a woman's, echoed faintly inside her head, smooth as silk yet threaded with command. Daughter of the Forsaken Bond, walk through the veil. Leora sat up, her skin shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Her pupils thinned to slits. The wolf inside her wasn't growling this time. It was kneeling. She swung her legs off the bed. Her bare feet touched the cold wood floor. And then, without even realizing, she began to walk. Kyle woke moments later. The bed beside him was empty, the air thick with silver mist. Leora. He scanned the room, his wolf stirring uneasily. Her scent lingered, but it was shifting, like she was fading between worlds. He bolted to the door, throwing it open just in time to see her figure moving toward the forest, barefoot, her hair flowing like black silk under the moon. Laura, no response. The moonlight itself seemed to bend toward her, guiding her deeper into the woods. He followed. Branches clawed at his arms, roots coiled around his boots. The forest wasn't natural tonight. It was alive, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. His wolf howled inside his chest. Mate, protect. Now, Leora stepped into the clearing by the frozen lake. The air shimmered as if wrapped in glass. At the center, suspended above the water, was a curtain of light, thin, fluid, and impossibly beautiful. The Silver Veil. Every wolf in their world had heard of it, the boundary between the mortal realm and the moon's domain. No one had crossed it and returned whole. The voice came again, closer, inside her bones now. You have awakened the bond, but every gift demands a price. Leora trembled. Who are you? I am the memory that shaped you. The first Luna, the one who bled beneath your name. Her throat tightened. The reflection in the water shifted, her own face staring back but older, her eyes hollow and bright like the moon itself. You wear my mark, little wolf. You open the bond that was never meant to be reborn. Now the moon seeks balance, she whispered. What does that mean? One of you must surrender, the heart or the soul. Kale burst through the tree line. Laura, his voice cracked the stillness, his breath fogging the air. But she didn't turn. The veil's glow had surrounded her completely, her silhouette flickering like a dying flame. Stay back, she said, her tone distant, dreamlike. She's calling me. Kyle stepped forward, the light stinging his skin. You don't answer the moon's call, Leora. It takes what it wants and leaves nothing behind. She looked back at him, eyes glowing faintly white. If I don't go, you'll die. The bond can't hold both of us. It's too strong. He snarled softly. Then we'll learn to control it together. It's not control she wants, Leora whispered. It's sacrifice. The wind howled, rising into a mournful chorus. The reflection of the moon in the lake split apart, revealing beneath it a void of swirling silver mist. Shapes moved within, wolves made of light and shadow, ancient, sorrowful. Kyle grabbed her wrist. Look at me. Her gaze flickered, momentarily human again. Kyle, we've already died once for their mistakes, he said fiercely. We won't die again for their balance. The ground shook. The voice thundered across the forest. Then the moon will choose for you. The veil exploded into motion, tendrils of light lashing outward like serpents. One struck Kyle across the chest, sending him sprawling back, blood misting the air. Leora screamed, the sound shattering the stillness. The mark on her neck flared with a violent glow, and in that instant she understood. The bond could consume one of them or both. She ran toward Kyle, ignoring the searing light, her hands burning as she reached for him. The moment their fingers met, a light bent inward, folding around them like a cocoon. Images flooded her mind again, past lives, broken vows, every cycle where they had failed the moon's balance. In each one, she saw herself dying in his arms. Not this time. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering through the chaos, "If one of us must fall, it won't be you." Kale's eyes snapped open, golden and wild. "Don't you dare," she kissed him, hard, desperate, final. Then she shoved him backward with all her strength, hurling him out of the veil's radius. A light collapsed inward, swallowing her whole. Kale hit the ground outside the clearing, choking on air that suddenly felt too thin. He clawed his way forward, but the silver veil was gone. Only silence remained, cold, absolute, merciless. He dropped to his knees, his wolf howling into the empty forest. And in the echo, faint but unmistakable, came a whisper that froze his blood. "The bond is never broken, Kyle, only transformed." Chapter 18. The Hollow Howl. The forest had gone silent. No rustling, no breath of night creatures, only the hollow echo of something vast and broken. Kyle knelt in the snow, his claws half shifted, his chest rising in jagged gasps. The place where the silver veil had shimmered hours ago was now nothing but air and ash. Her scent was gone, completely, not faded, not scattered by wind, erased. He pressed his palm into the earth, digging until the soil cracked beneath his fingers. His wolf raged, clawing at the walls of his mind, demanding to run, to destroy, to bring her back. But even his beast couldn't find her. Leora, the name left his mouth like a wound. Snow began to fall thin, silver flakes that didn't melt on his skin. They pulsed faintly with light, glowing like fragments of the moon's tears. The pack found him hours later. "Alpha," one of the warriors whispered, stopping short when he saw the state of him, half man, half wolf, eyes burning gold over the ruin of the clearing. Kyle didn't respond. He stared at the horizon, where the moon hung black. There had never been a moonless night in Fenharrow territory. Not once. Back at the stronghold, the air was thick with unease. The elders whispered of the moon's silence, a curse that had once fallen on the first packs when they defied the goddess. No wolf could shift, no healing could take hold. It was as if the world itself had stopped breathing. Kyle shut himself away in the council chamber, surrounded by maps and fading candles. His hands trembled as he traced the boundary lines of their lands, each mark a reminder of what he could lose. The pack needed him sane, but sanity had left with her. He could still hear it sometimes, the faintest trace of her voice in the wind, not words, just a sound. A note that slid between grief and promise. The first time it happened, he thought he was dreaming. The second time, he fell to his knees. "The bond is never broken, Kyle. Only transformed," the whisper again. He spun, claws flashing, but the chamber was empty. The fire had died down to blue embers, casting ghostly light across the stone floor. He pressed his palm to his chest, feeling the bond mark beneath his skin. It still burned faintly, pulsing in rhythm with a heart that wasn't entirely his. Was it possible? Could she still exist somewhere between worlds? By dawn, Kyle was gone. He left the fortress before the guards could stop him, shifting into his wolf form the moment his paws touched the frost. He ran without direction, through rivers, across cliffs, until the air itself tore at his lungs. His coat was soaked with melting snow, his breath steaming in the pre-dawn gloom. The world around him blurred, and then he heard it. A howl. Not human, not earthly, too layered, too mournful. It carried across the mountains, rising and falling like the tide. Kyle froze mid-stride. His entire body went rigid. Every wolf within miles lifted their heads, answering instinctively. Some in awe, others in terror. Because that voice, it was hers. The sound pulled at him, an invisible thread yanking his heart forward. He climbed higher, through jagged rock and cold mist, until the forest thinned into a plateau of silver frost. And there, at the center, lay something that didn't belong to this world. A ring of ancient stones, glowing faintly with runes, that had not been spoken in centuries. In the center, the ground shimmered as if reflecting water, yet there was no pool, only air, quivering and deep. Leora's mark burned bright on his neck, responding to the energy. He took one step closer, his hand reaching out, and the wind shifted. A figure stood on the far side of the circle, barefoot, hair like a veil of night. She was translucent, her edges bleeding into the fog, but her eyes were unmistakable, Leora. Her lips parted, the air trembled with her voice. You weren't supposed to follow, his breath hitched. You think I could stay. You think I could live knowing you vanished into nothing. Her gaze softened. You were never meant to die for me, Kyle. The bond was to end with me. He shook his head, stepping closer. Then it ends with us, together. The air rippled violently. The runes flared red. Don't, she said urgently. The veil won't hold two hearts, it'll consume you too. He smiled, a broken, feral thing. Then let it try. The world split, light erupted upward, swallowing them both in a storm of silver flame. For one heartbeat, he saw her smile sad and radiant, framed in moonlight. Then everything dissolved into white. When Kyle awoke, he was lying at the edge of the mountain. The snow had stopped. The moon had returned, brighter, fuller, alive. But she was gone again. No voice, no vision, no trace. And yet, in the distance across the valley, came a faint cry, a newborn's cry. Kyle's pulse stuttered. He turned toward the sound, his eyes widening. There at the base of the hill lay a small bundle glowing faintly silver against the snow. He stumbled forward, his breath catching as he knelt. A baby wrapped in Leora's torn cloak. Her scent clung to it, wild, pure, defiant. And across the child's tiny wrist was a mark, the silver veil sigil. Kale looked up at the sky. The moon was full again. And for the first time in days, he felt her voice, warm against the wind. Our bond didn't die, Kyle. It began again. Chapter 19. Blood of the Moonborn. The dawn broke slow that morning. Not gold, not red, silver. Kyle sat motionless beside the child, his breath clouding in the frozen air. The forest around them was utterly still, as if even the wind dared not intrude on what it witnessed. The baby slept quietly, bundled in Lyra's torn cloak. Each exhale shimmered faintly, leaving trails of mist that danced in the light. Kyle reached out, hesitating. His calloused fingers brushed the edge of the cloth, and the moment his skin met it, the mark on his neck pulsed. A faint glow spread from the baby's wrist to his chest, a heartbeat calling to another heartbeat. He froze. His wolf stirred inside him, not in hunger or rage this time, but in recognition. Ours, it whispered. She left us her soul. Kyle exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down his face. Number no, she wouldn't. But the thought broke before it could form. He already knew the truth. Leora hadn't been destroyed by the veil. She had become it. And this child, this small, silver-lit creature, was the veil's living bridge. Hours later, the pack found him again. The warriors froze at the sight of their alpha kneeling in the snow, cradling a child with faintly glowing skin. Alpha, whose child is mine, Kale said before. He could stop himself. His voice was low, raw, threaded with something old and sacred. The men exchanged uneasy glances. The mark on the infant's wrist shimmered faintly, echoing the sigil that had appeared on Kyle's neck after the veil's collapse. It's Moonborn, one whispered in awe. A curse, a blessing, a myth made flesh. Kale rose to his feet slowly, the child pressed against his chest. Spread the word, he said. No one touches her. No one speaks her name outside this pack. Yes, Alpha. But as they turned to obey, Kale's gaze lingered on the horizon. The moon, faint even in daylight, seemed to pulse once, like a heartbeat, and deep inside him, something answered. That night, Kyle couldn't sleep. Her baby rested near the hearth, eyes closed, the mark on her wrist glowing in rhythm with the firelight. He studied her features, the small nose, the faint curl of her fingers, the trace of Leora's scent lingering like wild lavender after a storm. "You look like her," he whispered. "Too much." He reached for a flask, hands shaking slightly as he took a drink. The liquid burned down his throat, but it couldn't wash away the ache behind his ribs. Every time the child breathed, the mark on his neck pulsed in answer, as if some invisible thread still tied them, not as lovers now, but as keepers of something ancient. At the edge of the stronghold, the air grew strange again. Shadows lengthened even without light. The guards reported whispers drifting through the trees, soft, melodic, almost like a lullaby. Kyle stepped out into the cold, the child in his arms. The world beyond the gate shimmered faintly. And then he heard it, her voice. "Protect what is born of our bond, Kale. She carries both our blood and the moon's will." His chest tightened. "Laura, the balance demanded one life to end. I chose mine. But it will never be enough unless she lives." The wind surged around him, silver dust swirling like fireflies. He looked down. The baby had opened her eyes. They were not infant eyes. They were hers. For a heartbeat, Leora's presence pulsed through the air. The same warmth, the same quiet strength. "She will grow fast," the whisper said. "Faster than you can protect her. The moon will come for her when the world trembles again." A light began to fade. Kale reached out, his voice breaking. "Wait, Laura, what if I can't? Then teach her what I couldn't teach you, how to love without fear." And with that, the wind died. Kale stood there for a long time, staring into the emptiness beyond the gate. The child shifted against him, tiny fingers curling into his chest. He exhaled slowly, his eyes glinting gold under the pale moonlight. "Then that's what I'll do," he said softly. "I'll teach her to fight, to survive, to love." He looked at the moon again, his jaw tightening. "And when they come for her," his voice dropped to a growl, "they'll have to go through me first." Chapter 20. The Eclipse of Fate. 6 years had passed since the night the moon-born child first opened her eyes. 6 winters of silence. 6 summers of shadows that never truly faded. Kyle had built his fortress not from stone, but from fear. The warriors of Blackthorn had long forgotten the taste of rest, because their alpha never did. Beyond the high walls, the forest breathed with secrets. The moonlight veil was no longer a sanctuary, but a scar on the land. Every tree seemed to hum with the same warning. The veil was thinning again. The child Saren stood in the courtyard that evening, staring at the silver line of the rising moon. Her hair caught the light like frostfire, strands shifting between pale gold and silver, depending on how she turned her head. She looked 6 years old in flesh, but her eyes carried centuries. Kale watched from the balcony, one hand pressed to the railing, his chest heavy. Every day, she reminded him of Leora, not just in her features, but in the way she stood defiant against the world, too curious, too alive. "Father," she called, turning toward him. Her voice still had the softness of a child, but there was a gravity to it, something that didn't belong to her age. "Yes," he answered. "Do you ever dream of her?" The question hit harder than he expected. Kyle drew in a breath, eyes flickering. "Every night," he admitted. "Why?" Saren looked down at her hands. "Because I think she dreams of us too, but her dreams are getting darker." He froze. "What do you mean?" "The moon told me," she whispered. "The shadows are moving again. She says the eclipse is coming back." That night, the moonlight shifted, its color bending into a dull red. A murmur swept through the pack. Wolves stirred uneasily, fur bristling, instinct screaming in ways words never could. Kyle stood at the watchtower, the scent of ozone thick in the air. Behind him, Saren approached quietly. It's happening, isn't it? He nodded. The last time this happened, your mother, his voice broke. She vanished into the light. Saren's gaze was calm. Then maybe she's the one calling it. He turned to her sharply. Don't say that. But before he could stop her, the mark on her wrist began to glow brighter than ever. The wind surged, howling through the valley, and the forest below erupted in whispers. The veil was splitting open once more. The first rift appeared near the old ruins, where Leora had once fallen. A line of light ripped through the sky like torn silk, revealing flashes of another realm beneath, shifting, violent, endless. Kyle gave the order to evacuate the lower territories. But when he turned, Saren was gone. Panic struck him like a blade. He shifted instantly, his wolf form tearing through the courtyard, following her scent faint lavender and moonlight. He found her standing at the edge of the ruins, the wind lifting her cloak as though invisible hands guided her forward. Saren, he shouted, shifting back, snow and ash scattering beneath his boots. Step away from the veil. She didn't move. Her voice was steady, distant. She's here. And then he saw it. A shape forming in the rift, tall, luminous, her body woven from silver flame. Leora, her name left him like a prayer. The figure smiled softly. Kyle, her voice was neither mortal nor divine, it was both. He stepped forward, torn between awe and terror. I thought I lost you. You did, she said gently. And yet we are still bound through her. Saren turned toward her mother, eyes glowing like twin moons. You're not whole, are you? Laura shook her head. Not yet. The veil demands a balance. I can only return if another takes my place. Kyle's breath caught. Number but Leora's gaze was on him, calm, eternal. The moon gave me life once. Now she calls for her due. You can't. She reached out, her hand brushing Saren's cheek. She's the key, Kale. The Moonborn is both gateway and guardian. If she seals the rift, the world lives. But if she stays here... Kyle's wolf growled low, primal. You are not taking my daughter. Leora's expression softened. You sound just like I did once. The ground trembled. The rift widened, light pouring like liquid fire, burning the edges of the sky. Saren's mark pulsed in answer, threads of silver spiraling around her like ribbons. Father, she whispered. It's my turn, isn't it? Kale took a step toward her, his voice cracking. Number, you're not her sacrifice. You're her legacy. But Saren smiled through tears that glowed faintly in the dark. She told me once that love means giving back what was given to you. You gave her life once, didn't you? He froze. Yes. Then let me give it back. The air shuddered. Leora raised her hand, power crackling through her ethereal form. Kale, whatever happens next, remember, there is no end to what the moon has joined. He reached for them, but light exploded outward, blinding, roaring, tearing through the veil. For a heartbeat, he saw both of them, Leora and Saren, standing side by side, one made of fire, the other of blood. Then came silence. The rift sealed. The moonlight dimmed. And Kyle fell to his knees in the snow, the world around him eerily still. When he opened his eyes again, dawn had come. The sky was whole. The pack was safe. But the courtyard felt impossibly empty. He rose slowly, his body heavy, and walked toward the ruins. There, on the cold ground where the veil had once been, lay a small crystal shaped like a crescent moon. Inside it, faint light pulsed, 2 heartbeats intertwined. Kale picked it up, holding it against his chest. The mark on his neck flared once, then faded, leaving behind only warmth. No end, he murmured. Only beginnings. He turned toward the rising sun, the silver light dissolving into gold. And though the world was quiet, he could almost hear them. Leora and Saren laughing beyond the veil, as if the moon itself had finally found peace. Epilogue. The last moonrise. 6 years later. The forest had grown back, wilder than before, roots thicker, leaves darker, and streams that shimmered faintly under every full moon. No one came near the old ruins anymore. They said the air there still hummed with the breath of gods, but Kyle did. Always. He walked slowly, his black cloak brushing the frost-laced grass. The wolves that once followed him now lingered at a distance, as if they too understood that this was sacred ground. When he reached the clearing, the wind rose, gentle, carrying the same scent he had dreamed of for years: wild lavender, storm rain, and something that only ever belonged to her. He stopped at the edge of the frozen pool where the veil once split the world in half. The water shimmered, rippling with moonlight. Above it, the sky was painted silver and gold. The first full moon of the decade, rising as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Kyle knelt. He placed a hand on the ground where he had once found the crystal. It still glowed faintly beneath the surface, pulsing softly like a sleeping heartbeat. "You kept your promise," he whispered. The wind answered with a hush that sounded almost like laughter. He stayed like that for a long while, the night deepening around him. He had grown older, his hair threaded with silver now, but the mark on his neck still shimmered whenever the moonlight touched it. It was weaker, but it never faded. From behind the trees came a sound like footsteps, hesitant, then sure. A young girl emerged from the shadows, silver hair, eyes like liquid gold. Kale turned, the breath leaving his lungs in a sharp, broken exhale. He had seen her before, once, in dreams, always reaching for him through the veil. Now she was flesh. She stood in silence, then smiled soft, knowing. "Father," she said. "It's time." He rose slowly. Time for what? She tilted her head. For the moon to rest. Then she looked at the pool and stepped closer. The moonlight reflected off her skin, painting her in white fire. Her voice was calm, ageless. "She said she'll always wait for you." Kale swallowed hard. "Leora." The girl nodded once, eyes gleaming. "She's waiting on the other side. The veil has opened again, but only for you." He looked up at the sky. The moon was descending, half-shadowed but brighter than ever. His chest tightened, not with fear, not even with longing, but peace. He knelt before the girl, brushing a hand through her hair. "Who are you now?" Her smile was faint, familiar, a memory and a promise. She extended her hand. For a moment, Kale hesitated, then took it. The second their palms met, light poured from the mark on his neck, wrapping around them like a storm of silver feathers. The air vibrated, the world tilted, and the pool beneath them began to glow from within. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Kale smiled, his first real smile in years. "I've been ready since the night she left." The world disappeared in light. The forest, the ruins, the wolves, all fell into silence as two figures dissolved into the moonlight. No pain, no fear, just warmth. When the light dimmed, only the pool remained, still, endless, reflecting the night sky. And for those who still believed in legends, some said that on nights when the moon was full and the air was still, two shadows could be seen walking across the surface of the lake hand in hand, one dark, one bright. Both eternal.